Hello and welcome to this COMP3218 game design and development video from the University of Southampton. My name is Tom Brown, I am one of the lecturers on the course and I am joined here today by...
Charles Hutchins, I'm one of the demonstrators on the course.
And today we are going to be looking at some more of our students' first coursework. Charles, could you tell us a little bit about what we asked the students to do for this?
Yeah, sure. So we gave them the task of doing a prototype game with a clear core dynamic and then tutorialising some of the elements of the game so we can see what it's like.
Excellent. All right, let's take a look at our first game. Okay, and our first game is Woods. So we've got a little title screen, like a little bit plain, but it's a title screen. It does the job. And I think it's probably best if we go through the tutorial first. Okie doke. WSD space shift keys to move around. Okay, so we've got spaces jump, which seems to be draining a stamina bar at the top. We've got shift, which isn't doing anything. We can also use the... Interesting. We can use the WSD to move around, and I guess shift is sort of sprint. I run a lot faster than I can turn around. Oh look, there's my shadow. Pick up the item. So we've got some spinning things. I'm guessing these are the items they're talking about. Okay, so I've got some crinkly silver stuff. I'm not sure what that is. And a gun. Yep, there's the gun. And an apple. Oh, we've got an inventory. Okay, so we've got... Wow, we've got a crafting system. Craft ammo using the scrap you picked up. So ammo, so it requires item scraps, quantity 20. Okay. So initially I was like, oh, okay, this is looking a little bit simple, but there's actually a reasonably complex set of things to do, and I can't close out of the inventory. Oh, I can close out of the inventory. But they want me to use the apple first and then kill the monster. Okay, so I think that's the first sound we've had in the game as well. Okie doke. Tutorial complete, and that's dropped some sort of medicine as well. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Straight into
yeah,
it.
it's certainly not. But now, hang on, where is it? Oh, it's still. So I can't really turn very fast. Is the problem? Okay, I was wondering whether it would pause when I open my inventory. I was a little bit worried that it might not. So, oh. Oh, I see something else running in from the background there. That is really loud, actually. I'm just going to very quickly just turn that down a bit. Oh no, I'm going to die. There we go. Oh, we've got a wolf as well. Okay.
There's a wolf there, oh yeah.
Oh, and now there's two of them. Okay. So this is round one, and I am almost dead. Although, to be fair, that's partly because I was wrestling with the volume. I don't seem to be able to turn anymore, though.
I think you've been hit. I think this is
dead. Oh, am I dead?
Now? Your health bar's...
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. Right.
There's some sort of death animation maybe that didn't quite play. So I survived for one round. Let's see if I can... Oh, no, it just closes. We don't go back to the menu screen. Let's load that again. And yep, okay, good, game capture's working. Okay, so this is going to be a thing that happens several times, I think. Oh, interesting, the mouse controls feel a little bit smoother now.
Oh, you're not showing a screen anymore, sorry.
Oh.
I can't.
Okay, right, because it's... So I need to tab, gun, use. Okay, so I have a feeling... Oh, we're on round 0 now. I don't even get the... Oh, there we go. That's what the thunderclap is for then.
Oh, right. Okay.
Alright, so I have a feeling that the rest of the game is going to be more of the same, and it's just going to be sort of, increasing levels of difficulty, which is I guess to be expected. Oh, okay, I can't go this way, and I've got a dog eating my hindquarters. Shall we take a look at it with the mark scheme?
Yes.
So, there are several different things we're going to be looking for in the mark scheme. The first one on our list is overall sort of quality, and that's broken down into a number of categories. The first one we're going to look at is sort of general presentation, so things like the information design, the graphics, the audio, not necessarily the quality of the individual graphics and audio, but how well they've sort of drawn them all together into like a single coherent game. So I guess kicking off with the information design. So what information have we got that they're showing us?
We've got health bar, we've got a stamina bar, we've got all kind of like relevant sort of information, not relevant information there.
Spiders as well. We've got the audio cue for the round changing. We don't necessarily have how long each round is, or how many enemies we have to defeat each round, or the ammo for the gun. Now that I think about it, ooh, we can craft. How do we craft a first aid kit? We need pills for that. We've got a lot of bullets, so that's something I noticed that was a little bit interesting. I'm getting a bit off topic and jumping ahead to mechanics, but we have to, or rather we can craft bullets, but we can also just find them lying around everywhere like that.
And that seems to give us quite a lot, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so maybe a couple of balanced things that we'll talk about in a minute, but going back to information design. So there's a few things they're doing like really nicely, like, you know, the health bar, the sort of prompts to reload, actually nicely displaying just, you know, what's the word? Like these items and things, they sort of spin around, they're quite large, they highlight really nicely. There's a noise when we're taking damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even like the crafting scene, it's like, it'd maybe be nice if there was like a little icon telling us like, you know, scraps with the scraps icon, but otherwise that's actually quite nice as an interface. So what would we be looking at sort of there? So most of the key information is shown versus all of the key information is shown, really.
I was wondering, like, because we don't have a clip size or anything.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's part of the game that we don't know.
That you actually have to count it yourself. You could definitely argue that. And maybe to a lesser extent the what's the word? The sort of round timer, or like what each round will entail. But I think maybe a little more description of, you know, how many, like, so again, we're going to talk about core dynamic again in a little bit, but if the core dynamic is, as I suspect, survival, it's all about, you know, how long can you survive and things like that. So they're measuring time in terms of round, but what are we measuring rounds in, I guess? Yeah,
some information about like when you kill a certain number, or when the clock ticks down to this, the round will change.
Yeah, like can I get away with just running around in a circle and leading a merry conga line of horrible monsters around and rank up that way, or do I have to sort of fight my way through them?
Yeah.
Ooh, there was something about first aid kits and pills. So I would say this is probably between a satisfactory and a good. They're displaying a lot of the information and they're doing a lot of it well. There are maybe a couple of extra bits. Oh god, a couple of other bits and pieces that could be added.
Yeah. So yeah, cool. Sounds good.
That didn't seem to do a lot. Can I do anything with the pills? Give me an absolutely tiny amount of health, but they do give me something. Okay, cool. So that's that for information design. Actually, you know what? I think what you were saying earlier was right. Things like the sort of clip size of the pistol and stuff, you could justify as, it's not like they've forgotten to put it. That could very easily be a gameplay choice. I think some of the elements could be a bit clearer, so they don't necessarily reach the excellent level, but I think actually in retrospect, they do reach good. Okay, so moving on to the rest of the presentation, the graphics. The graphics to me are actually quite well put together. Like, the environment's quite nice. The monsters are quite horrible. There are like various sort of points of interest, I guess, that although that's sort of more leaning towards level design. But overall, I think the graphics are nice. They're,
Yeah.
I would say, consistent and effective, perhaps even consistent, effective, and appealing.
Yes.
Which would put them up towards excellent, I think.
Yeah. So what have I got? It's consistent, effective, and appealing graphics, and the next one up is consistent, effective, and
thematically resonant.
Yes.
Which would be, so for example, there are, obviously elements that they could use to sort of improve it in terms of, I was about to say, if it was, because it's survival and because there's horrible monsters, if there was sort of, like a more dark and stormy element to it. And I'm just trying to see, the sun actually is setting.
So maybe that is...
So it's getting towards it.
Yeah.
Ooh, that looks good. I want this. Oh, heck.
Okay, yeah.
So the sort of different types of monsters are, perhaps a little bit of a mismatch. There's, sort of giant spiders and wolves and these horrible things. So yeah, I'm not sure it's quite up at the prize-worthy, but I think otherwise it is still excellent. Okay, which takes us on to audio.
Maybe, sorry, on the previous one. So like possibly maybe in between an excellent. Maybe a little bit more than excellent, would you say? Or
tough to say. No, I think I would say excellent. I think there are still a couple of like things they could do to improve it a little bit.
Cool.
But it's it's still excellent, and excellent's still very like you want to say things like excellent is still good, and it's like no, excellent is excellent. They are distinct.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry. We can continue to audio.
So things like, for example, sort of this slow down and whatnot. And some of this could maybe be tweaked a bit. And now I realise I'm going to have to restart this again. There we go. Audio, yeah. So there's quite a variety of sound effects, although no music from what I can tell, which is a little bit of a disappointment, because not having any music puts them down at a pass, which is audio or music. To get a satisfactory, they'd need audio and music.
And is that sort of part of the theme element? Maybe that was a conscious choice. Maybe, I don't know. Do you see what I mean? Sort of like to try and make it a bit more atmospheric.
So this is
just
true.
You and monsters.
It doesn't have to be. What's the word? It doesn't have to be, sort of like bright, upbeat, chirpy music or anything like that. But it could be sort of like, background sounds and other atmospheric things, like the wind whistling through the woods, like distant, like howling and things, like ambient sort of stuff that's not tied to particular actions in the game. So the thunderclap, for example, only happens when a round changes, and that's quite good because it gives you a clear indication that the round has changed. But otherwise it feels quite empty.
It's a shame, but yeah, I see what you mean.
So the other thing is, again, you're right, you could definitely make an argument that it would be a good idea to make a game that has no sound in that way at all, but when it's something that we've asked for in the mark scheme, it's an important thing to include, really.
Yeah, no, I do see that. Okay.
So yeah, so unfortunately, although the use of effects is very, very nice, I tell you what, let's put them between a pass and a satisfactory, because the effects are very well used, even though there's no music. Let's put them between the two there. Okay, which brings us on to meaningful play, so how the game feels, how it controls, what mechanics there are, and whether we notice any sort of particular bugs. So starting off with mechanics, they actually have a reasonably complex set of mechanics. So they've got, sort of like spawning monsters, they've got a health system and a stamina system. There are some mechanics that I would say aren't perhaps well utilized. So the jump and the sprint, I actually forgot about until it came to talk about mechanics. Like, there's no reason for me to jump. I can happily sprint up like every hill and sort of around or through every obstacle without needing to jump. I guess maybe I could jump over like the spiders, but that seems not super useful.
I was just thinking if you could jump onto that tin roof or anything like that. Maybe that's is that like what you wouldn't normally be able to get up there, but maybe not.
No, looks like I can't actually get up there anyway, which is probably for the best, because I think that would probably break their difficulty a little bit.
Yeah.
So what else have we got? We've got shooting. We've got what do you call them? Lootable drops. Oh no, I have found a spot where I'm safe.
Yeah.
We've got crafting and things like that. Again, maybe not hugely well utilized, because as we've already said, collecting scraps doesn't seem to be actually that useful, because we seem to collect ammo perfectly fine without it. I guess collecting pills for medkits is quite useful, because they have some use by themselves, or you can hang on to them and combine them for later. That's actually quite good, and will tie into the risk and reward thing that we talk about in a moment, I think.
I'm guessing that you get more health if you combine rather than just have them individually. Maybe it's. I'm just trying to think. Is it
at the very least? It's going to be easier to just use one med kit rather than using 30 bottles of pills, even if they do equate to the same amount.
I suppose, but like if it's paused, if the whole game's paused, then I suppose there's no risk of just going 30 times. Do you know? Yeah, if the whole thing is paused, you can just use that. I'm guessing you can use them by themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. It looks like that.
Interesting. There's still a use button on this.
Yeah.
There's also a remove button, which it feels like, there's some limit to the amount of things you can carry, but I don't think that's ever going to be. I don't think I'd ever need to throw anything away. Okay, so if we had a quick look at satisfactory, for example, a set of consistent mechanics, and I think we're there. A set of good would be a set of complementary mechanics, and excellent would be a wide set of complementary mechanics. Going beyond that, there'd have to be a wide set of complex and complementary mechanics. However, I keep getting distracted by spiders. They definitely have a wide set of mechanics. Whether they're all complementary, I'm not sure, because as we've discussed, some of them seem to have, limited value. Although the mechanics they've got are quite good. So I would. It almost feels like they have a wide set of mechanics that aren't entirely complementary. So they've. Yeah. Which I guess would be sort of good.
Yeah, they do complement each other to a certain extent.
Yes, some of them certainly that's true. So perhaps between good and excellent again then.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that feels probably fair. In which case we move on to the controls. So reasonable set of usable controls, reasonable set of smooth usable controls for it to be good. Overall, actually, I think we're at least at good. The controls are a little bit finicky, particularly turning around at some points. The like having to pause and like click and then use and then is somewhat cumbersome, but it's not the end of the world. Having to, I think we start with a pistol, and having to always equip that at the start of every game feels, again, a bit sort of redundant when you could just start the player holding it, because there's nothing else I can do but run away from things. But otherwise, I think they're pretty good, yeah. So I think we're at least at good. Again, maybe getting towards excellent. I think there's enough sort of enough, what's the word? The small issues I have with sort of the movement speed versus the turning speed, I think, stop it from perhaps reaching towards excellent. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's definitely a good. Perhaps even halfway between the two again, because there are a number of different controls. It's not just moving and the shooting, they've also got the inventory management and things like that. And actually, now that I say that, the clicking and dragging and stuff is, again, not actually that useful, but nice that they've included it. They've definitely put some thought into like the management aspect of things. So I think halfway between good and excellent again.
Yeah.
I don't seem to be able to find any more baddies at the minute. Cool, so next is bugs and complexity. So how complex do we feel the game is? Have we noticed any sort of obvious bugs or worse game-breaking bugs? And for the most part, other than, a couple of positions we can sort of find to... Oh, there's something. To sort of defeat the enemy's pathing a little bit. I think we're alright. There we go. So I would say I can't actually see that bit of the mark scheme from where I'm set up.
It's it's game. So good as a game is reasonably complex, but there are infrequent minor bugs.
That feels pretty much nail on the head here.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. An excellent. So the next stage up is game is reasonably complex, and there are no obvious bugs. There's quite an obvious bug.
Well, wait, hang on. There's some obvious bugs. Comedy. No, I would say we might actually be there as well, because again, they've got a number of things going on, and perching on a corner of the geometry isn't something that we would have run into if we weren't trying to do it. But you're right, it's kind of we don't need the jump. Like, we could solve that bug by actually removing one of the mechanics that we're not using. So perhaps halfway between the two there. This clicking is a bit frustrating.
Oh, you've got the gun now. I've been switching windows and seeing, upgraded a bit.
That was quite satisfying. How am I going with ammo? No, I've still got plenty. I haven't had to craft anything yet. Yeah, and even like the sprint mechanic, I've not really needed to use that much because I move so fast already. I've forgotten where we were with bugs. Yeah, so perhaps halfway between the two then, because it's certainly not a major bug, and the rest of the game is relatively complex. Right, that brings us to the brief that we asked them to do, which was to make a game with a tutorial level. And they certainly have a tutorial level. Let me just go. Oh, no, so I have to quit the whole game rather than just going back to the menu, which is a bit of an annoyance. Okay, so the level design, goals, risks, and rewards. So clicked the wrong thing, so we've got to quit out again. Where are we? So I wanted to go through the tutorial actually, just as we're restarting. So we'll leap ahead to that bit of the mark scheme, just so we can chat about that. I've got to make sure to click the right button. So yeah, there is definitely a tutorial. It's not the most... I was going to say it's not the most comprehensive tutorial. It is comprehensive. It teaches you all of the things you need to do. If I move around, it doesn't move on to the rest of the tutorial until I've shown that I at least do the shift and space as well. And make sure I pick up all the items before proceeding to the next bit as well. Feels like there's a bit of a delay in picking these up compared to in the game itself, but maybe that's just to make things obvious. I've got to craft ammo first, so I do that. Equip the pistol. So yeah, there is a tutorial. It's not thoroughly integrated into the rest of the game. It is in its own sort of like separate tutorial zone. And it's not really done sort of naturally through gameplay. It's very sort of like, here is the tutorial zone, right? It's not done through the level design. It's done sort of outside of that. They set up like a special area in which to teach us it, which has pros and cons. The pros being that, you know, if we know how to play, we don't have to sit through the tutorial every time we want to play. But also, it's a little bit artificial. There's no. Can I break the tutorial by killing this before I use the apple? No. Okay, so they had foreseen that, which is good at least. So yeah, in terms of tutorial, so yeah, we start off there, which is something else I have to mention, and yeah, I have to equip the gun again, which is a little bit redundant and somewhat confusing, because the first time I played this I thought I hadn't I had to go and run around and find the gun. I didn't realise I actually started with one because it didn't start automatically equipped. Getting off topic again. Tutorial. Gradual explanation of gameplay and controls somewhat aligned with play would be a satisfactory. And the thing is, it's, well, I mean, it is gradual, right? It's sort of done in steps. It's all, but it's not like, for example, you know, at round 5 they introduce a new type of monster, and they introduce it in such a way that you're shown how it works and things like that. They kind of do that with one of the weapons. I'd be interested to know if there are other ones that they introduce later on in the game. It feels like that rifle always spawns at the same time, at the same point though. So there's some element of like introducing stuff that wasn't in the fixed sandbox tutorial bit, or ring fence tutorial bit rather. So this is the thing. A pass is gradual explanation of gameplay and controls revealed as you play. Satisfactory is explanation of gameplay and controls somewhat aligned with play. So while it's not integrated into, you know, the main game mode itself, it is aligned with play. They make you sort of do all of those things rather than just saying, yeah, here's the controls, here's what you do, now go off and do it. So they do give you that sort of option. Oh, you don't start with a gun, it is there. But yeah, it's not done as part of the main game, and it's not done through the level design. So I think I would put that sort of between a satisfactory and a good, I think.
Yeah, I agree, because the next one stage up would be gradual explanation of gameplay and controls fully aligned with play.
Yeah, and an excellent would be it's done through the level design itself.
Yeah, so halfway between a satisfactory and a good, did you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think
yeah,
like part of it is they, as much as we said there's like a really wide set of mechanics, they sort of tell you all of them right at the start. It would be maybe, so one way, for example, I can think that they would improve this is they just teach you about, you know, here is a gun, here is a monster, and then when you start running low on ammo, then they give you that sort of contextual, hey, you can use all of that scrap you've been picking up to craft ammo kind of a thing, sort of as you go on. So it's not all like front loaded, but it happens sort of more naturally and organically as you play. And then sort of, as I was saying, like to get the really high marks, you do it through sort of the level design, which in this case would be sort of, you know, the way the monsters spawn. So you introduce like a new monster in a particular level. If it has, you know, a particular special attack or something different, then you can introduce that in a way that lets the player deal with it. Cool. So going back to some of the other aspects of the level design. First off, goals, risks, and rewards. So there is some element of goals, risks, and rewards. There's, you know, do I save all of my health pills and turn it into a first aid kit, or do I just chow down on them straight away? Other than that, there doesn't seem to be much. Do they mention anything in their little game notes that they handed in with this?
I think the risk and reward is the stay alive as long as possible with limited resources. So,
but that's the goal, and the goal is pretty clear. But there's not a huge element of sort of decision making in terms of the risk versus reward.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to think of something that's not horribly contrived, and I can't do that and play this at the same time. But if I had a gun that cost twice as much ammo to use, for example, the rifle maybe does that in that it fires faster, but it's not quite the same. It's clearly better. There's no sort of risk to using it. And similarly, because sort of the design of the level itself, fighting the monsters all feels relatively similar as well. It's just a case of backpedal and keep shooting. I don't know if, for example, I got a damage bonus when my health was low or something. That's something that I might even deliberately lose a little bit of health to keep that damage bonus up, but be at more risk of dying, or something sort of along those lines.
Yeah.
So I would say there's very, very clear goals, but a limited set of risks and rewards, which puts it pretty much on satisfactory.
Yeah.
Which feels reasonable, actually. Yeah. Okay, and the next one is pacing. This one I'm a little bit unsure of, because so firstly, that sucks. Like, spawning in a monster right next to the gun that I'm trying to get at the start of a level feels a bit what's the word I'm looking for?
Unfair, yeah.
Yeah, you want to start, the player off with, a hook to get them invested. So you do want some level of tension and drama immediately, but you don't want it to be unfair in that way. So there is pacing. We start off with one monster, and then we sort of are continually fighting them, and there's sort of an inherent tension and pacing in that our resources are ticking down over time. But in terms of the actual sort of design of the level, it doesn't feel like there's much escalation in terms of, the type of monsters, and while there might be an escalation in the number of monsters, it doesn't always feel like it's sort of pushing me.
Also, I think you mentioned earlier that you have a lot of ammo. I think one time you opened your inventory and you had 360 bullets or something. I thought, that's... are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Oh, for me, the stream has stopped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
I think we have all of the ingredients of something that could be very, very sort of well paced. But I think again, there's maybe some things that aren't quite tuned to really give that across. So, rather than dropping ammo, if they just dropped, the scrap, but even then, would that make a difference? If I'm collecting scraps and turning them into ammo rather than just turning them directly into ammo, it's one of these things that feels, they wanted a crafting system, so they just put one in. It doesn't necessarily add to that tension or pacing.
What would be nice is sort of if the player was forced to go somewhere to get that ammo and then to craft it, that might be. So instead of dropping, like you say, ammo, there'll be there's a little hut over there that you could get, sort of funneled into if you're not careful. So you've got to run there, get the scrap, come back out, then find somewhere to craft.
Yeah,
you've that got, kind of thing.
A sort of a safe defensive position that you can hold out for really easily at. But the crafting bench for making new ammo is out there in the wilderness, kind of a thing.
Oh yeah.
Or something of that nature. So as it is, I would say the tension, it does rise over time. I don't know whether it's... Would you say it clearly rises over time, or it somewhat rises over time?
I suppose it does. I mean, in terms of just the number of monsters that spawn, because at the start you kind of, you kill one zombie and you're, oh, okay, that's cool. And then, you get to later rounds and you do find, oh, I've got 3 following me now. Okay, so that there is a somewhat, it does clearly rise over time, even if we're not limited in ammo.
Yeah, I think it's so like there are different types of monsters as well, which is some kind of escalation, but it's not clear if, like they all act exactly the same. So it's not like, oh no, I hate the spiders because they move so much faster, or oh, I hate the wolves because they do like more damage, and over time there's more of those. So again, there's definitely elements that they could sort of take from what they've got and extend it further, I think. But yeah, okay, I would say, yeah, tension clearly rises over time. I don't think it necessarily has the coherent pattern that we're looking for to get beyond that, though.
Oh, yeah, so it would either be,
So I think
satisfactory
I think it's probably satisfactory in terms of pacing.
Yeah.
Okie doke. Core dynamic. So we've spoken about this a few times. What did they say in their game notes that their core dynamic was?
Survival.
Good. Yes, that's exactly what I would say it is as well. And it definitely looks like, again, they have all of the ingredients of a survival game, and they've mostly put them together quite well. There are a few things that we've already mentioned that they could maybe do to sort of heighten that a little bit, so to make us feel like we're much more stretched for resources than we are at the minute. Because right now the only resource that matters is health, basically. Like we never have to worry about ammo. Or I don't know, maybe, yeah. And again, partly due to the sort of design of the level and the way the monsters attack, all I'm ever doing is just running around and collecting stuff. If there was, weirdly, that sort of bug where we were hiding on the rooftop almost highlights that sort of need for the ammo management, because if I did just sort of hole up there and just kill all the monsters, eventually I would be forced to move. But because there's no sort of designed place like that, I don't have that choice that really encourages me to sort of like hunker down, spend all of my ammo, and then start panicking that I don't have enough. So yeah, overall, I would say core dynamics very, very clear, and it is partially supported by the mechanics.
Yeah. I would say that was fair. Yeah.
Which puts them, again, at a satisfactory, which... like perfectly reasonable place to be. A couple of places that they could sort of tweak things to improve it. But yeah, so next and the last thing for this video is the feedback. So one of the things we did sort of during the lab sessions for this coursework was give out feedback, ask the students to sort of interpret this and implement it as part of their game. So in their game notes, what did they say about the feedback they'd been given?
They said not to teach the player too much, but instead to let them find out how the game works through playing.
Okay.
Which I suppose we're not sure about what the state it was before the feedback, but they do that to a certain extent in the tutorial level.
Oh, do they? Because it feels like they very much tell the player what to do. Like they do it in a reasonable way, but it's none of that we sort of... Maybe we've just not spotted it, but there's certainly... It doesn't feel like I've learned anything from playing the game that wasn't told to me in the tutorial. Other than there is also a rifle, I guess. So did they say anything else for the feedback?
I'll soon find out what the player will soon find out that a more powerful weapon is needed for them to survive longer. I don't know if you find that. Do you find that because you now have your rifle, you're now kind of a bit safer? I found that you could probably just use the pistol and it would take longer to kill the enemies, but you would still survive the same amount of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because, again, sort of because of the way the AI is all relatively similar to just sort of... Like, it's a very open space, and the AI is, quite simple, which is to be expected in a game like this, and that's fine. But I can always just run circles around them, and you're right. With a pistol, it would take slightly longer, and I'd probably be doing slightly better if I wasn't also having to grade it against a mark scheme. But, yeah, and if anything, that sort of harkens back to what we were saying about pacing, right? If we're being given a thing halfway through that suddenly makes it a lot easier, you really have to up the tension of everything else to give it the same feeling of drama.
And you've had the rifle now for quite a long time in your play.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there are... Okay, so actually... Okay. So this is the thing I hadn't seen before. Curious if they have, the license to use the likeness of a certain famous ent in their Okay, so alright, that shuts me up when I was talking about they need to heighten the drama. They've added skeletons and ents. Fair enough.
Yeah.
What else did they mention about feedback?
As important was not to display too much information to the player, which I've only decided to include what is necessary for the player to know in the UI.
Okay, so this goes back to flipping heck.
Oh
Now they've
my
got barrels. Okay, this has escalated very quickly. Although, again, still, although the types of monsters have escalated, the actual sort of challenge and pacing doesn't feel like it's changed that much, because I can still just keep running away.
Yeah, and you could still use the pistol, and it would still be fine, but it would just take longer.
And I've only got 40 ammo left, although a lot of scrap. Let's just, there we go. Yeah, and weirdly, the fact that the crafting thing pauses it, again, is another sort of really good example of sort of maybe taking away some from that pacing. Because there's no sort of risk-reward in, do I stop and try and make myself a first aid kit? Oh god, oh god, oh god. It's just oh perfect, I can just suddenly like eat 1,000 apples in one go. Okay, so yeah, in terms of the UI design, we sort of talked about this at the start. They have all of the essentials, and while there are a couple of things that they could have added, it seems like a reasonable decision in terms of the feedback that they've decided to like keep it to the absolute essentials. Okay. Was there any other things they had in their game notes for that?
That's it, really. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure the first part that was talking about teaching stuff as they go on, whether that sort of materialized, because as far as we've seen, most of the information that the player is taught is all in that sort of first ring fence tutorial section, and although there are sort of different enemies that are introduced afterwards, the player doesn't have to learn anything new to deal with them. In fact, I've sort of lost them all. They're all it's interesting. Yeah. The bigger, scarier enemies seem to get stuck in the trees a bit more.
Yeah.
So some of them seem to spawn in behind you, which again feels a bit like cheating. Okay, so yeah, that one it feels like maybe, I don't know, not even that they've not interpreted the feedback well, it's just that they haven't necessarily done the thing that they said they were going to. Or at least, yeah. So that feels like feedback was sort of not addressed well, although some positive changes have been made, which puts them way down at a poor. However, the UI sort of elements and the other thing that they mentioned feels more like, feedback was addressed and the changes have been sort of somewhat successful, sort of moderately successful, which I think puts them maybe between a satisfactory and a pass there.
Yes.
What do you think?
Feedback was addressed, but changes have had limited success. Feedback was not addressed well, although some positive changes have been made. Yeah, I'd probably say a pass as well. Yeah.
So I think they're probably slightly better than a pass, because they have made some changes, and yeah, they sort of justified some of the decisions they've made in context of that feedback, although I don't think it's been perhaps as successful as they were hoping for. So yeah, I think probably between a pass and a satisfactory for that.
Yeah.
Excellent, which brings us to the end of this game. Let's move on and have a look at the next one. Alright, and this is Escape the Village. So, very nice title screen, very nice background music. Actually still a little bit loud, so I've already tweaked it down a little bit, and I'm just going to tweak it down a little bit more so we can definitely hear each other over it. And let's jump straight into the tutorial. So, left and right arrows to move. Okay, can't go any further this way, so let's keep going right. Up arrow to jump. Oh no, a pit. Okay, let's restart the tutorial and let's jump over the pit this time. So I saw this game in the expo, and I remember at the time jumping over the fire in this, but I don't think we actually need to. I think the fire is just background setting. It's these spikes that we have to worry about. So pumpkins for points. So we've got a score at the top right. We've got a green pumpkin that lets us run faster and jump higher.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we've got a purple pumpkin that gives us double points, and that's kind of a nice way of introducing that as well. So we've got to escape the village, don't let the ghost catch you. Okay, I'm guessing that's the ghost. Oh no, I missed the... There. That did not go great, I'll be honest. So immediately, like the graphics are all quite nice, but it's a bit difficult to tell what's a platform and what's some of the background clutter. Like the cage versus these boxes is actually a little bit of a challenge, and because we've got to move so fast, sort of constantly, it's a little bit tricky to do.
It would be nice if it was like maybe a little gold border or something, just to say. I thought they've done that with the spikes, haven't they? They said like, oh, it's red, so don't do it, don't go near it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And annoying because the green pumpkin makes me faster and jump higher. It actually makes it harder for me to predict where I'm going to go because it's no longer what I'm used to.
Yeah.
But there we go, a bunch of extra points there. There we go. So I think part of the reason they said they had that fireplace in the tutorial where they did was to stop you panicking about fires elsewhere in the game when they show up, so you don't have to worry about jumping over them necessarily.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Which on the one hand is like sensible, but on the other, the fire shows up immediately where you're told to jump to avoid dangerous things. But overall, there we go. So I'm staying ahead of the ghost quite nicely so far. Lots of spikes.
Is that right?
Oh no. I talked a big game and then... Oh, there we go. Sorry, green pumpkin. Okay, so while I am getting far too overconfident at this... Oh no. We should probably take a look at the mark scheme. So the first thing we're going to look at is the overall quality. And information design, which we've already sort of touched on a little bit.
Yeah, so we've got all the key information being shown or not. And we've got a nice score on the top right. Which, yeah, that's a good indication of, sort of like our goal. As well as, yeah, escaping the ghost, which we can clearly see in things.
Yeah, so we the spikes, as you say, are like really nicely sort of color coded, so they're a bit more obvious. Some of the platforms perhaps blur into the background a little, which is a bit of a problem, but not a huge issue. Like for the most part, it's fine. But things like the fact that the fires are actually background rather than foreground, and the fact that the crates, particularly sort of at this bit, sort of blend into some of the background a little bit. Is like a bit of a problem. So there's maybe some things they could have made a bit clearer, like you say, by either giving them a bit of a stronger border or by sort of fading out some of the stuff in the background a little bit more. But otherwise, yeah, we've got the clearly differentiable spikes, we've got the pumpkins that are very clearly different and they stand out quite nicely. And obviously we've got the ghost, who is a very nice bright colour to stand out from everything else behind us. Because mostly we're going to be looking at our main character, and having the sort of ghost in our periphery, having that nice bright colour sort of stands out quite well. So yeah, part of the problem is I'm sort of too busy eyeball. Oh no, that's.
The boxes.
We can push crates, or at least that one crate. I'm going to take this opportunity to glance over at the mark scheme. So yeah, good would be all key information is shown, excellent would be all key information is shown clearly.
What would you say about the speed boost? I think I probably would have liked an indication of when the speed boost is going to run out, unless unless I miss something and it's going to like run out when you get to a particular point, and I didn't clock that. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, that's a great point. I assumed it was just after a certain amount of time, and you're right. It would be nice if there was some sort of indication for that, whether it's a little bar ticking down, or our character flashing when it's about to run out, just so that we don't start a jump just as it runs out and then fall to our deaths. So yeah, I think so. It feels like almost all of the information is shown, maybe minus some of that extra bits and pieces, and most of it is pretty clear. There's a few bits that could be a little bit clearer, like that, but otherwise, I would say this feels like it falls between a good and an excellent. Okay, what about the graphics as a whole? So we're not judging the quality of the graphics, but how well they've been sort of put together, how consistent and coherent they are.
I think they've done a really good job. Everything, it's escaped the village, and you're clearly outside, and in a very long village, but in the village nonetheless.
Yeah, I think the background is maybe a little bit over pixely compared to everything else, but
yeah.
But again, that's
sort of part of the style, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. It's not really something that we're looking at too much, as long as it sort of mostly gels with everything else, which I think it does. So, would you say the graphics are consistent and effective?
I would.
Yeah, would you say they're consistent, effective, and appealing?
I would say they're appealing, actually. Yeah.
You know what?
What's the next? Yeah.
I think I would as well. So I think there's a couple of bits and pieces they could have, maybe done to improve that. Sort of like I say, some sort of like minor inconsistencies between like pixel resolutions and things like that. But that can be difficult to manage when you're drawing from different assets. So I think, having what was I trying to say? Yeah, clear, consistent, and appealing. So I think they probably fall within the excellent for that.
Okay, next up we have audio.
Yes, we do. So we've got some lovely background music. We've got some... I can chuck that into a pit. There doesn't seem to be much reason for that. So we've got some lovely footfalls that sort of really emphasise some of the running. We've got, pretty dramatic music. Do we have a death noise? Yeah, we've got sort of death noise as well. So a number of different audio effects at play. Some lovely little ka-chings when we get the special pumpkins. So yeah, some nice bits of feedback there. So, complementary audio effects and music, I think we're easily there. Are they complementary, effective, and appealing? I mean, you can't hear them because of the way we're streaming, so I shouldn't really be asking you that. So I would say they are. Again, I don't know if we necessarily reach the sophisticated end of the things, which would put them up at prizeworthy. There are some really sort of cool and interesting techniques you could use, like, for example, have the tempo of the music change depending on how close the ghost is to you. Which would really push it up there, but otherwise I still think it's always interesting. I'm stuck there. But yeah, otherwise I think that's definitely an excellent for audio as well. So what about the mechanics? So we have standard sort of movement controls, jumping. We have a number of different power-ups that have different effects. We have this entity that is chasing us.
There's power-ups as well, which is good, which also do help with the game. They do contribute to the core dynamic and the gameplay, because you want to get away from the ghost, and if your speed is increased, that's a good thing. So you do really want to get those pumpkins.
Yeah, so they're complementary mechanics, aren't they?
Yeah. I don't know if they were. I would say that they were. I'm just looking at the mark scheme. I'm not sure if I would say that they were wide. I don't know if maybe. I mean, there's a score increase as well, which is good.
Yeah, so a good would be a set of complementary mechanics, and I think we're probably... You can tell every time I look at the mark scheme because I die immediately. And I think we're definitely there. An excellent, like you say, would be a wide set of mechanics, and I'm not sure we're quite there at the minute. I think we may be part-way there, though, because they do have, the different power-ups and things like that. It doesn't necessarily change much about the actual gameplay. The majority of the gameplay is, run right and occasionally jump. But they have different types of obstacles as well. They've got boxes versus spikes and things like that. So yeah, I think they're part of the way there to it. Okay, so the next
probably fall somewhere between the two, or would you say?
I would say between a good and an excellent. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next part is the controls, and overall, yeah, they're pretty good. So we've already talked about getting the green pumpkin power up causes a little bit of difficulty because now I'm no longer jumping where I thought I would be jumping. I'm not sure if that's a problem with necessarily the controls themselves or the way they've laid out the pumpkins, because the pumpkins are mostly laid out, like here for example, with a specific jump height in mind. So there, for example, I missed a pumpkin because I had the super jump enabled. And a lot of the sort of the crate and platform jumps seem to be tuned for the regular jump as well, which means even though I've got the speed jump, I actually have to sort of stop, let myself fall down and position myself a bit before I can continue.
Almost as if like a double jump would probably be better, like it enables double jump sort of thing.
But the controls themselves are pretty good. Like the jump feels the jump feels alright. The running feels like relatively smooth. There's a couple of bits of level geometry that we get caught on occasionally, but again, that's not really a control issue. So where would we be for that? Good would be reasonable set of smooth and usable controls, and excellent would be reasonable set of intuitive and smooth usable controls. And again,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say they're definitely at the smooth level. I don't know if they were intuitive.
Yeah, and I guess we do file that sort of the pumpkin balance, if you like, under the sort of intuitive controls kind of thing, because it means that I end up having to pause in midair and let myself fall down a bit rather than sort of maintaining that flow, and perhaps, like you say, having it be a double jump instead might be more intuitive in that way. There's also, not a massive set of controls. There's primarily like run and jump, and that's partly due to there not being a hugely wide set of mechanics or mechanics that the player has at their disposal to interact with the rest of the game. So yeah, I think we probably fall at about the good level there, which is still, good.
Yeah.
And next is bugs. So a couple of bits where we've got a bit caught on like the terrain or something like that, but again, hardly a game-breaking issue. That for the rest of it, I haven't really noticed any other bugs. Have you spotted any?
No, not for me.
Okay.
Yeah, there was just that one where you got stuck in between, wasn't there?
I guess there's
stuck between some terrain and pushed the box, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say there's sort of that issue where if I miss a jump, I have to go back, but that's not really a bug. That's just a level design.
Oh yeah.
Or an element of the level design. But otherwise, yeah, no real bugs, and the game is. How complex would we say this game is? So we've already said, there's not a massive set of mechanics or controls, and I think that sort of ties into the complexity here.
Yeah.
So is it reasonably complex? I'd probably say it was. I mean, I think you are certainly getting better at it. I don't know if you feel that as well, like judging jumps, and you're getting used to how the speed pump can affect where you can go, which you could argue is kind of skillful as well. So
here's the thing, actually, from speaking to them in the expo. So on the surface, I would say this game isn't actually that complex. From speaking to them in the expo, they said actually a lot of this level design is done procedurally. So it feels like that's where they've sort of spent some of their complexity, if you like.
Yes. Right. I didn't notice that at all.
So this is the thing, right? It may not have been the best place to sort of put a lot of effort into, because it's not necessarily obvious.
No.
But yeah,
So
I
you-
think...
So I suppose it's the ghost that kind of speeds up, but they procedurally generate sort of like the triangle of boxes or the platforms and stuff, and I suppose they get more frequent maybe.
Yeah, so
and
I think the way they have it is they have sort of like a set of tiles, if you like, that they then sort of like place next to each other. So they have sort of like some pre-built sort of interesting platforms that then get sort of shuffled and put together. So do they talk about this in any of the notes they added with the game?
Let's have a look. Right, score is given by this. No, they don't mention it. No.
Okay. So I think we'd maybe put this sort of between a good and an excellent. So a good is, there are infrequent minor bugs, and excellent is no obvious bugs. Partly due to, like, on the surface, the gameplay itself is, a little bit simple. But we haven't really found any bugs. So I would say between a good and an excellent for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about how well they actually fulfilled the brief of what they were set out to do, which was all about level design and tutorials. So for level design, one of the things we are going to look at is the idea of goals, risks and reward. So the goal is, or the ultimate goal at least, is pretty clear. It is keep running right for as long as possible, don't get eaten by a ghost. So far so good. What about risk and reward though?
There isn't much in the way of... I mean, there is risk, because you can, find yourself on a spike, or the ghost can catch up with you.
Well, that's
see...
failure conditions. That's not me choosing to risk something for, a better reward. There's arguably some risk in okay, well I can try and make this jump to get the purple pumpkin kind of a thing. But because it's an endless runner, if I fail that, I haven't really risked much. It's better for me to keep going and play it safe almost than it is to. It's always this bit that gets me killed by the ghost. So there is an element of it, but I would say it's like a little bit limited, because I can, if I miss one of these pumpkins, I do have the decision of, do I run back and get it for a higher score, say? But for the most part, it's probably better just to keep running right.
Yeah, I suppose it as well depends on
find a new pumpkin in a second. And again, that sort of ties into, I guess, some of the balance and pacing of those green pumpkins, because they actually make it quite difficult to get. So for example, this bit, I'm going to struggle to actually get all of the pumpkins because of the way the power-up's designed. So, where are we? Good would be a clear and coherent set of goals, risks and reward. Satisfactory would be a coherent set of goals, risks and reward. A pass would be a limited set of goals, risks and rewards. And I think like the goal is very clear, the goal is very coherent.
Yes.
The risks and rewards, Well, here's the thing. The risks and rewards are clear, but limited, is the thing.
Mm.
So it feels like, on balance, I would maybe sort of put this at the satisfactory level. Because I'm never... Like, that choice of, ooh, what if I miss this pumpkin? You know, it's just, well, I'll just keep running until I find another one. I'm more likely to get a higher overall score if I just keep going right than if I worry about trying to make a particularly tricky jump or anything like that.
Yeah. And also, I'm guessing that this kind of never ends. It's all procedurally generated and the ghost gets faster. So in a sense, that if you can just be faster than the ghost, you'll get those points anyway back, I suppose.
Yeah, so this is something that is probably going to come up when we talk about the core dynamic. I'm curious to know what they class their core dynamic as and sort of how they feel they've evoked that. But we'll come back to that in a minute. In terms of pacing, so you're right, the ghost does seem to get faster, and I believe that is, again, sort of determined by our progress through the level. But the levels themselves are, you know, there's a lot of repetition, even if they are sort of like procedurally put together, for example. It's always that bit. So there's kind of the inherent like tension of just, you know, it's an endless runner, so the further you get, the more tense things are because, you know, oh, am I going to beat my high score this time? And the fact that the ghost speeds up to make that more of a challenge means, yes, there is definitely, you know, a rising tension. Because they've gone for this sort of like infinite set of like levels that are sort of, you know, reused or recycled. It's a bit difficult to maintain the same level of pacing in the level design because you're inevitably going to have to reuse some features that have been seen before and, you know, potentially like mastered already. So, what would a good be on the mark scheme for this?
It would be tension rises over time in a coherent pattern.
And I think we're probably there, at least. Like, the ghost gradually gets faster and faster and faster. We're incentivized to, you know, try harder and harder as we go. But there, for example, we just saw the same, like, level set, like, 3 times in a row. And because it had a green pumpkin on it, it actually removed a lot of the tension because I was able to just absolutely sprint my way past the ghost and all of the obstacles. And then here, there's an obstacle that basically guarantees that I'm hit by the ghost because of the way it's designed. So I don't think they quite reach the excellent level because that's all about, you know, the overall balance of it. But I think we can definitely say the tension rises over time, and there is there a pattern to it? There's a pattern to the behaviour of the ghost, but not the behaviour of the levels. Again, I'm not sure how they're sort of putting the levels together, whether they have, for example, like a difficulty score of each next chunk, and they weight that based on your progress. But the fact that we saw the same chunk like 3 times in a row makes me think perhaps not. So perhaps between a satisfactory and a good in that case.
Okay.
Okay, so the next part is the tutorial. So I will, if I quit, yes, it goes back to the main menu, excellent. So let's have a quick look at the tutorial. So we've got left and right arrows to move. So they appear sort of contextually as we move around. When we're told how to jump, we're given something to actually jump over. This bit is the bit I was talking about. So it says, you know, jump over the spikes, and then there's this burning fire thing. But that's not the spikes they're talking about. So there's maybe possibly room for confusion there, although I can see why they've put it there. We've got to pick up the pumpkins for points. Maybe would have been nice if the score in the top right flashed or something at that point to really draw your attention to it. I like that these ones are sort of colour-coded to
Oh yes.
to draw your attention to. Purple pumpkin has this effect, green pumpkin has this effect. I like that they set up, an area for you to see and understand what each special pumpkin does. And I like that then once you've completed the tutorial, it just sort of puts you straight into the main game. So we don't have to always do the tutorial, if we're an expert, but once we feel that we've done the tutorial, we get put into the main game itself. So, although the sort of tutorial bit is, slightly ring-fenced outside of the context of the game, they tell us all of the important elements, and they give us a chance to sort of explore and practice it within the context of gameplay, even if it's not the main bit of the game. So they do a gradual explanation. They teach us to move and then jump, and then the pumpkins. And they are, I guess, this is the thing. They are the three sort of components of this game. Other than the ghost, and the ghost is introduced when we get to that main stage. So, gradual explanation of gameplay and controls. Is it fully aligned with play?
I know what you were saying about when you picked up the pumpkins and stuff in the tutorial level. I mean, that's kind of aligned with the play, but like you say, I suppose introducing the ghosts sooner maybe. I mean, I suppose you can assume that you want to run away from the ghost, I suppose.
Yeah,
you can assume that.
You can effectively think of the first part of the main game as the last part of the tutorial, right? That's where they're introducing the ghost and saying you should run away from it. I meant to pick up the tutorial there. I'll go this way. Yeah, so you're right. The pumpkin bits in particular are aligned with play, because it doesn't just say here is the purple pumpkin gives you double points and gives you a purple pumpkin. It gives you a purple pumpkin and then a row of regular pumpkins, so you can. And similarly, the green pumpkin, it puts a set of crates for you to jump over and sort of see and understand how it's working. And then we go ka-ching, 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 ka-ching. Oh, that's weird. It said that lasts 10 seconds, didn't it? Does the green one last?
Oh.
Interesting.
Oh, this is the... No, it isn't.
I have fallen out of the world, it seems. Okie doke. Well, it certainly wasn't an obvious bug.
No. No.
So I think we're still okay to keep them between the good and the excellent there. But yeah, minor bug, infrequent. I think between good and excellent for the bugs is still fine for that. Can I? I don't think I can actually quit out of this though, so I may have to quit this and load back in if I can't get back in.
That's a nice scenery though.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I jump back out of the pit? No. I'm just going to see if I can get all the way back to this end. I don't think I'm going to be able to. So what were we talking about? I've gotten distracted.
We were on the tutorials.
Tutorials, that's right. So yeah, fully aligned with play. Do they communicate the... Yeah, I am going to have to fully quit out, unfortunately. Do they communicate that through the level design?
I think
partly, right?
They do partly, yeah. They do partly.
So the thing we were talking about with the pumpkins and whatnot, they give you a line of pumpkins within sort of the tutorial, at least. It would be nice if maybe, like partly it's they don't, like we've already said, they don't have an enormous set of elements to tutorialize, so they can't do a lot of it solely through the level design. But I think they're perhaps working their way towards it with the way that they've laid things out in the tutorial level. So perhaps, again, between a good and an excellent there, I think. Okie doke, and that takes us on to the core dynamic. So yes, in their game notes, what have they said about their core dynamic?
Let's have a look. So their core dynamic is survival.
Okay. So that is mostly what I expected.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought they might make an argument for was chase and evade, because we are being chased by this thing, but it's all sort of dependent on the framing, right? We are trying to survive for as long as possible, and we're inevitably going to fail, therefore survival does seem fairly fitting. So the question is, and they may have mentioned this in their notes, I'm not sure, which of the mechanics align with that, or maybe don't align with that?
So I'm saying all our game mechanics all contribute to improve your chances of survival. This includes being able to move left and right. I'm not sure about left, really.
Yeah.
Jump and pick up power-ups.
I mean, if you miss a jump, I guess you might have to go left for a bit, but that always seems to end in death anyway.
Yeah.
Anything else they mentioned about?
No, I'm just reading that. They're just saying about the pumpkins and about...
So here's the thing that I think is made... Yeah, see, I can't make that jump if I've got the green pumpkin. I have to sit and wait until I can fall onto the platform, and that always gets me killed. So, what's the goal in this game? Is the goal to run as far as possible, survive from the ghost for as long as possible, or is it to get the highest score possible?
So I think they're arguing that you can go for different styles of play. So you can collect all the points if you want to, and then get more points but die earlier, or just keep running through and get whatever ones you hit.
But this is the thing, right? The game is saying, like, I'm being judged on the score, because it's counting a score in the top right, which is tied to the pumpkins, rather than how long I've survived, for example. And when I die, it says, this is the current high score. So although they are saying you could try to play this multiple ways, the game is saying this is the goal, this is what you should be trying to do. So I'm not saying that completely breaks their core dynamic, but because, again, the generation of the pumpkins isn't, for example, fixed, and because a lot of it is to do with navigating the space and like reaction times and things like that, rather than specifically surviving for as long as possible. Because I could get 20 purple pumpkins in a row or something like that on one run, and on the next run, even though I survived much longer, I might not end up with that. So my overall score isn't necessarily determined by how long I've actually survived, even though it's probably correlated with it. Obviously, like if I could survive infinitely, I'd probably end up with infinite points. But there are perhaps things they could have done to really emphasize that a little bit better. For example, after surviving for 10 seconds, we get a multiplier. After surviving for 20 seconds, we get another multiplier. So they can still keep their mechanic of collecting pickups and things like that, but it becomes more explicitly tied to how long we've survived for.
Yes. Yeah.
So I would say, going left isn't going to help me there. So a satisfactory would be a clear core dynamic that is partially supported by the primary mechanics. A good would be a clear core dynamic supported by the primary mechanics, and an excellent would be a clear core dynamic supported by an integrated set of mechanics. So I think we're definitely at least at the satisfactory. Like, most of the mechanics support what they're going for. And the primary mechanics are effectively run away from the ghost. That means they have hit the good as well. I don't think they have reached the excellent though, because some of their mechanics do draw away from that a little bit, because, as they say in their notes, I could choose to die really quickly if I think it's going to maximize my score. Or if it's a survival game, I shouldn't be thinking that. I should be thinking, I have to survive longer to maximize my score.
Yes.
Okay, so last on the list for this game is the feedback. So in the lab sessions, we gave them some feedback. We asked them to interpret this and integrate it into their game. What did they say about the feedback they were given?
So, responsible in two main parts. They were asked to strip the game back to its mechanics and see which were contributing to the core dynamic, and which was simply just adding sort of like extraneous things. Oh, they had mechanics such as picking up collectibles to build shelters and attacking the enemy.
Interesting.
But that made it hard to distinguish what our core dynamic was. I suppose I do agree with that, although I suppose if you had multiple ghosts...
I guess it depends on what they mean by building shelters, right? Because it's very difficult to build a shelter in an endless runner. But that's certainly not to say that, you know, survival games can't have you building shelters. In fact, most of the survival games I can think of off the top of my head pretty heavily revolve around building shelters.
Yes!
So I think
Yeah.
it almost sounds to me like that was a thing that they were told because designing, you know, crafting and building systems into games often is a lot harder than people think and will take up a lot more sort of time and scope and budget effectively. So it's good to start with, you know, your core fundamental principles of your dynamic and then iterate on that if you need to. However, removing combat might be a good choice because that maybe does muddle the dynamic a little bit. Again, that's not to say you can't have combat in survival games, but if you want to really focus and emphasize them, you can do that by keeping it to fleeing and running away or living as long as possible at least. Did they mention any other points of feedback?
Yeah, actually, it's an interesting one. They said like they had ideas for like a timer for survival or a distance metric. And what we settled upon was a score system that allows you to vary your style of play depending on how much of a risk taker you are. So this variance in gameplay and the need to beat your last score is what brings people back to play the game again. Okay.
Okay.
But
So
it was interesting. Go on, yeah.
I was going to say, I can certainly see the logic behind that. Like, so one of the things, you know, because it's in the mark scheme we've emphasised in the lab sessions is this idea of risk and reward. However, I think the way in which they'd implement it has come at the cost of inadvertently muddling the core dynamic a little bit. And yeah, if they were measuring time or distance, that would have solidified it a little bit more.
Yeah.
However, I mean, when we were talking about the goals, risks, and reward, right? We did say that element of the pumpkins and things was kind of the only element of risk versus reward we could see in it. So if they hadn't have done that, they would be struggling for that element of risk versus reward. So, okay, so I think that change, for example, it's had a positive effect in some areas, but maybe not enough of a positive to balance out some of the negatives, unfortunately. Okay, so a satisfactory on the mark scheme would be, for example, feedback was addressed and changes have been somewhat successful. Whereas a pass would be feedback was addressed and the changes have had limited success. And it feels like I'm erring more towards the satisfactory side of things, purely because although we've said they have perhaps they have had some success and limited success in other areas, so I think that sort of falls around the satisfactory. And we could say it was a pass because, like I say, do those negatives perhaps cancel out some of the positives, but I think we can err on the side of satisfactory there, because I can at least understand their reasoning behind making some of those changes.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's all for this game. So let's move on to the next one. Alright, and this game is Dungeon Hero, I believe. So, nice title screen, really lively music. We've got play, tutorial, and quit. Let's start with the tutorial. Ooh, okay, that's a lot of information all on the screen all at once. So not exactly a gradual introduction there. But okay, let's go for this clockwise. So we've got a health bar. Health decreases when we're hit. So far so good. We've got a score. Increases by enemy killed and time. Okay, so that makes me think they're going for a survival game. We've got a clock which shows how much time we've survived, WSD for movement, left click for shooting, escape for pause and exit.
Okay.
Okay, yep, we can definitely move. Definitely an enemy there. Ooh, the enemy attacks us as well. And our health goes, can we die in the tutorial? No! It seems to stop about halfway. That's kind of a nice touch at least. Oh no.
Oh.
No, okay, never mind. We just apparently don't take damage until we move away a bit.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, the enemy's still there. Okay.
Okay, so we can shoot the enemy. Enemy dies. Oh, okay, but it just keeps coming back.
Okay.
Okay, so...
Would have been nice if the enemy kind of died and didn't come back for a while, just to kind of like cement the idea, wouldn't it?
I mean,
it's like
it would be...
you're doing.
Yeah, or if there was like a slightly more... Well, a slightly more gradual introduction to some of these concepts. So, you know, we have a corridor, we have to walk down the corridor and then see the skeleton, and then we're told how to shoot, and then we can kill the skeleton, and then we walk to another bit and there are 3 skeletons, and then, you know, we kill the 3 skeletons and then it says, good job, you have completed the tutorial, kind of a thing. So on the one hand, it is nice that it's a bit of a sandbox where we can try out all of the mechanics repeatedly, we can see how killing skeletons affects our score. But it doesn't feel coherent because, you know, there's no end to it. We have to manually sort of quit out, go home, and then play the real game. But okay, so let's play through some of the real game. So yeah, these skeletons are not standing still. So we'll just circle through.
They're quite fast, actually. That's quite good.
They are, but so am I. The music's a bit interesting. The title screen music felt it matched this style of gameplay a lot better than this sort of current, sort of, I think almost slightly jazzy piano.
Oh, okay. Just thinking, if you're getting more enemies, or the enemies are getting faster, what do you reckon?
I'm not sure at the minute. It feels like we've only got sort of 3 on the screen at once. We're about a minute. So yeah, I've lost 1 tick of health. So it feels like this might be a bit of a war of attrition kind of a thing.
There's no ammo or anything, I don't think, have you?
No. Okay, so let's start going through the mark scheme.
Yeah. So, first up on our list is quality and presentation. So, information design. So we've got is all of the key information shown? I would say probably is. You've got a health bar. You've actually got. Have you been taking hits? I haven't been watching.
So this is the thing. This is the one thing that I think is missing. When we shoot an enemy, the enemy flashes. When we take damage, we don't. So we have to sort of keep one eye up in the corner over there to sort of know what our status is. And in fact, you know, you could do that even a little bit further and sort of have some representation of the health on the character, whether it's, you know, just a little health bar, or, you know, they get bloodier as they go on or something. But overall, they've got sort of, you know, the key bits of information. They've got it's clear to differentiate between enemies and everything else. It's clear when the enemies are actually taking damage. It's clear when they're attacking. It's not clear if we're taking damage, which is a bit of a shame, because if their core dynamic is what I think it is, and what I suspect it is, then that's kind of a key element, really. And we've also got the timer as well, which is another key element of the dynamic that I suspect that they're going for.
I feel like as well that you actually, once they swing their sword, you take damage even if you run away.
Really?
I don't know. I'm trying to look at both where you are and also where the. Also, I think you're supposed to be dead right now.
I think it's just the last bit of my health bar might be hidden under that heart.
Ah, okay.
Although
But yeah, it looks like we're winding up for a swing. See, you took damage there, and I mean, you only took a little bit of damage, maybe.
Actually, that's the point. What happens if I just don't shoot anything? How many of them will I stack up, do you think? Yeah, you're right. It does look like once the attack animation is triggered, I do lose a chunk of health, even if I'm... So, okay, so maybe the hitbox, for example, of where that attack lands isn't super clear. I think I may have found what we call a dominant strategy here. Which is to say, optimizing the fun out of the game. By doing something really, really boring, I can effectively get an infinite score. Because I don't think they're spawning any more skeletons, and although I'm not going to get the points for killing any of them, my score for time is slowly ticking up and up and up and up and up. So yeah, something to be cautious of. Players are very good at optimizing the fun out of a game if they think they'll get a better score. Okay, so on the mark scheme, so would we say most of the key information is shown? I think we would.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't seem to be firing. Oh, okay, now I am. That was a bit weird.
Oh, they all that was a bit strange. Did they all?
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened there.
They all disappeared.
Or did they? I will try and what's the word? Shepherd them all back into the skeleton blob, and then see what happens. Or is it that they all take damage from my weapon? So like 3 shots was enough to kill the entire blob.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, we'll come back to that. So yeah, satisfactory would be most key information is shown. Good would be all key information is shown. Perhaps between the two then, because the hitbox thing and whether we're actually taking damage is pretty key. But yeah, and okay, that seems to be a bit of a bug. So I'm not shooting anymore. I've still got the shooting animation, but nothing's coming out of my gun.
Yeah. So we're going to go with most key information is shown.
Yeah, I would say between the two, because it is
Okay.
like, you know, it like we can tell if we're taking damage because we've got the health bar up here. They could just and now it started again. Okay, yeah, that's a bit of a problematic bug, that one. But we'll get around to that. In fact, you know what? I might even go as far as saying, you know, it is good. The information is being shown. It's just not as clear as we'd like it to be.
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, I think they probably managed to just about get a good for information design now.
Okay.
Graphics. Would you say these graphics are consistent?
I would say they were consistent. I mean,
Would you? The relatively high resolution skeletons and square man with gun.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah.
Either the protagonist doesn't necessarily fit in this game, or these enemies don't necessarily fit in this game, I think. So, I mean, it's not hugely jarring, right? It's not like one of them's a 3D model and one of them's a sprite and they've just tried to cram them together.
Yeah.
But they are not necessarily the most... Here's the thing, right? The mark schemes for a pass is consistent but poorly chosen, and a satisfactory is consistent. I would say these are not consistent but not poorly chosen. And I mean, mostly they're consistent, right? We've got pixel enemies and pixel hero, but they are relatively what's the word? Disparate, stand out. They don't match up super well together, so I would be inclined to say this is probably at a satisfactory level.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if you feel the same way, but the enemies don't show up very well because they're very similar colour to the background, and they're also very thin, like you say. Like they're different. They're a different sort of. It feels like they're from a different animation pack.
Yeah. So I
Opposite pack.
So I will say at least they stand out okay for me. So I'm the one playing the game and I'm streaming it as we're doing the marking. You're right. They certainly the main character stands out much better because he's got this really bold sort of cartoony black outline. So he stands out really well against the background. But the skeletons could be better, but they're not terrible in that regard.
Yeah.
Because if that was a problem, then it would probably be poorly chosen and inconsistent. But as it is, I think satisfactory is probably where they're at for this. Audio. Yeah, the menu music feels like it would be a lot more fitting for this than the actual music. So there's a little bit of shooty audio effects, sort of a little pew pew, and there is a little bit of feedback when we get hit by a skeleton, or when they attack at least.
Okay.
So we're at least at satisfactory because they have audio effects and music. Are they complementary? Well, the audio effects provide a little bit of feedback to what's going on. There's not a huge amount of them. And I'm really not sure the music is complementary to the gameplay. So if I go back to the... That felt a bit inconsistent as well, the amount of damage I took there. If I go back to the home, like this sort of like really bright, lively, fast-paced chiptune feels so much more appropriate to the actual gameplay.
Oh, I mean, sorry, I can't actually hear, but
so I would say
I'll take your word.
So I would say probably a good. They're still complementary.
I think I was somewhere in between the two.
Well, here's the thing. So I think in a way they are somewhat appealing as well, but they're not necessarily fully complementary. So I think that sort of averages out again at a good rather than anything else.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now in terms of meaningful play, so what it's like to play, what the controls are like, what the mechanics are like. And speaking of mechanics, what have we got? We've got skeletons that attack you if they get close, and we've got a gun that shoots the skeletons. Other than that, I mean, obviously we've got the movement, and we have, scores for skeletons at a time, so there are a number of bits and pieces, even if they aren't hugely impactful. But looking at the mark scheme, a good is a set of complementary mechanics, and excellent is a wide set of complementary mechanics. And again, it feels like this is leaning towards the good. They don't have a huge amount of things, but the things that they've got do work well together. We've got skeletons and we've got a gun that shoots skeletons. These things are certainly complementary.
And you also got movement in there as well, and obviously your movement would affect your gun and all that sort of thing. So there's a certain amount, of predicting where the enemy's going to be and where you're going to be, that kind of thing. Because I would probably say we would add to the core dynamic, or if I know,
we'll see.
The core dynamic is what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think they probably hit a good for mechanics. There's not a wide set of them, but the ones they've got do work well together. And similarly for controls, there's not a lot I can control here other than moving and shooting. But the moving and shooting feels very smooth. It feels very easy to control.
So yeah, a good, probably a good for that really, because I suppose the next stage up would be intuitive and smooth. And
yeah, while the moving and shooting feels relatively intuitive by itself, there isn't a. It's the set of controls bit, I guess, that we're getting at that is potentially holding them back there. It's a relatively limited set of controls, although the controls they've got are very very smooth and usable. So yeah, I think probably a good for that on balance as well. Bugs. So I would say for this we may be sort of more at the pass level. The game is simple, or there are some serious bugs. And it feels like actually we're kind of there for both of them. So there is the game itself is pretty simple. And also there's a bug where, here we go, right on cue, we can't actually shoot, which is, pretty major, unfortunately. Luckily it doesn't seem totally game breaking, it comes back, but given that our controls are move and shoot, and about 50% of the time the shoot doesn't work, that's a pretty major bug, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that probably falls at the pass level. Okay, so what next? Next is how well their game fulfills the brief. So first off, goals, risks and rewards. Well, the goal is relatively clear. The goal is kill skeletons, don't get killed by skeletons. What is the element of risk and reward?
There's not much you can... I would say it's quite a limited set, just because there's nothing else that you can do to kind of or you can... There's a gun that will make you shoot more, in a spray of bullets or something like that, but it'll take longer to reload. And
yeah, it ties back into what we were saying earlier, which is there's a limited set of mechanics and controls, and therefore there's going to be a limited set of things they're able to do with it, unfortunately. And as I sort of shown already, it's easy to sort of game the system a little bit and eliminate most of the risk entirely.
Yes.
Although they do seem to be stacking up a little bit now. I wonder how many they'll keep spawning. So yeah, so while the ultimate goal is fairly clear, overall we've got a bit of a sort of limited set of goals, risks and rewards, I think. So that's probably at the pass level as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so next is the pacing, and
for me, I don't know, I'm not the one playing it, but I'm guessing it doesn't really rise. It kind of comes in at one level and just sort of stays there.
Yeah, I think I'm really struggling to work out even if the number of skeletons or the speed at which they spawn in, or if the damage they do seems to increase over time, and I can't tell, and I think that's part of the problem. So even if they are making an effort to try and raise the tension, it's unfortunately not having the desired effect.
Yeah.
So it feels almost like... It almost feels like we're at the sort of pacing is flat level, unfortunately.
Yeah. Variations in tension, but no coherent pattern over time. I suppose...
But no, like you say, it starts at one level and it pretty much stays at that level.
Yeah, it doesn't. I mean, even if there was a round end, that would be a variation, wouldn't there?
Yeah, it's so for that, for example, variations in tension but without a clear pattern, it would be if it started off easy, then got extremely hard, and then went back to easy, and so on. But it doesn't have that variety. It's which is a shame.
Okay.
Tutorial-wise, let's. I shall kill myself and we can go back and have a look at the tutorial. I do really like that menu music. Yeah, so as we sort of said when we first saw this, nothing is introduced gradually, unfortunately. We're told everything all at once. We are given some amount of freedom to experiment with it and try it out, but it's not in the context of normal gameplay, because the skeleton's not moving. It respawns infinitely in the same place. In fact, that bug with the gun's still there. Oh, there we go. So where would we be for tutorial? So there's certainly an attempt to make a tutorial, which is good. There's certainly an explanation of gameplay and controls. A pass would be gradual explanation of gameplay and controls revealed as you play.
It's not.
And it's not. It's not. No. It's all sort of revealed at once, and it's not. So I would say it's perhaps just below a pass, except for the fact that we're given this sandbox to try out these elements, and we can see that once we shoot a thing, how our score changes and how the time affects our score. It's probably enough to bump them up to a pass at least, because they are almost aligning some of it with play. It's like I say, it's not happening in the context of normal play, which is why it doesn't reach up to the satisfactory level. But it's not totally absent from it, so I think they probably still hit the pass there.
They give you a chance to, because this is going to be the environment that you play in. So I suppose when you go into the actual play stage, you already know kind of, this is the tutorial, so it gives you a bit of a
Yeah, but because it's like a totally open-ended sandbox and it's relatively ring-fenced at the same time, like we can experiment for as long as we like, although there's not much to experiment with, and then to actually proceed we have to manually quit out. So it's not like the tutorial is aware of the player's understanding of the mechanics. It's not like well done, you have learned how to move, now we're going to teach you how to shoot. Well done, you have learned how to shoot, now we're going to give you a bigger challenge. Well done, you have completed the bigger challenge. Like we think you're ready for the real game, kind of a thing. So yeah, I think that's what. So I think they still probably just about get a pass level, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to the design elements, the core dynamic. What did they say in their game notes that their core dynamic was?
We have survival as our core dynamic in this game. Yeah.
Okay, any further explanation, or just it's survival?
The hero needs to protect himself by dodging and gunning and surviving for as long as possible. Players will earn scores based on the number of skeletons they kill and how long they survive.
So
players will keep trying to survive longer to get a higher score, which is a positive feedback cycle. Are we reminded what our score was, or is in kind of like the same session?
That's a great question. What happens if we die? Do we get a high score? We're told what our final score is, so they don't track high scores or anything, which might be a nice thing to do to really incentivize that going back and trying it again thing.
Yeah.
But I will say the core dynamic, they've done a lot to emphasize that it is survival, despite the fact that most of what we're doing is killing things. We're mostly doing it to survive longer. It's almost a little bit undermined by the fact that we get quite a lot more points for killing a skeleton than we do for surviving, the points we get based on the timer. But because killing the skeletons is necessary to survive, well, it's actually not, but the intention is that it's necessary to survive longer, and killing them simply spawns in more skeletons.
This is interesting. They put the number of skeletons allowed to appear at the same time in the game is constant. So if the player kills some skeletons quickly, the number of skeletons in the game will be temporarily reduced, which will reduce the stress and difficulty of the game for the player. the reason we're finding it flat is because they've programmed it to be flat. We don't get any more skeletons once, as you kill one spawns. I'm guessing that's what it's saying.
Yeah, which led to the issue of if you just play Ring Around the Roses with them, no more spawn. You can just have a conga line of skeletons, unfortunately. So looking at the mark scheme, we've got satisfactory is a clear core dynamic, partially supported by the primary mechanics. A good is a clear core dynamic that is supported by the primary mechanics. And I think we're maybe between the two because of some of those issues that we sort of talked about. Partly there's a lack of mechanics that they can actually use to really influence or really emphasize that dynamic. Partly the fact that you get points for destroying stuff rather than primarily for surviving. But also the fact that you are scored based on how long you've survived, partly because surviving for longer gives you the opportunity to kill more stuff and get more points in that way, partly because you directly get score for surviving. So yeah, I think potentially between a satisfactory and a good, potentially a good for that. What do you think?
Probably say, yeah, I would say it. Graduation of gameplay. It's supported by the primary mechanics. It is. I know there's a limited set of them, but they are. But the core dynamic is supported by the primary mechanic. And the next level up would be integrated, and they're obviously not integrated because, like you said, there's only kind of really one of them. So I would probably say it was 70. Good. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So I think they're probably at the good level for that. Okay, and then the last element is the feedback. So what did they say about the feedback they were given?
So feedback. The game. So one of the feedback was the game cannot be paused or restarted. Once the avatar is dead, the game's over. And the players have to quit the game manually. Okay. So they introduced a pause menu, which can be called anytime when playing.
Okay. Any other elements of feedback?
So death menu. I've heard a clear death menu when the avatar is dead. So you can restart from that screen.
So to me, that sounds like some feedback they got from playtesting rather than they got within the lab sessions, just because that, yeah, sure, that's an issue, but it's not something that necessarily relates to the criteria that we're looking at.
Yeah, they actually say that later on in their feedback. They say, oh, we couldn't make the lab sessions. So I think this is... Yeah, so we asked our friends, classmates and family members to try our game. Okay. Okay,
well this is why attending the lab sessions is important, because although playtesting for friends and family is a really good idea to work out some of those, bugs and bits of polish, they don't know what criteria it's being marked against, unfortunately. I wish they did, it would make my job a lot easier, but it's also why we put on multiple lab sessions throughout the sprint, so that there's always an opportunity, and we maintain a Discord where people can get feedback as well if they need it. So I think really that's kind of feedback not reported or addressed, because it's not feedback from the course team.
There's also something else. They said we changed the attack of the enemy from a fixed value to a range of values to kind of accommodate for critical hits, so an enemy has a chance to critical hit you, which I think is why we're seeing the range of damages sometimes to yourself.
Okay. Again, that doesn't. Yeah, that feels like it makes things more inconsistent. I think that's something that if you were going to do that, you'd almost want like a really simple way of doing that would be to have the regular skeletons that always do a regular amount of damage, and then just tint one of the skeletons red, make it like an angry skeleton that does bonus damage or something like that, because then it's much clearer to the player what's happening and why.
Or even just a score, saying oh god, he critical hit you, so it's in there would be sort of number in a box that's red, and then for normal damage is yellow or something.
Yeah, that's the, it goes back to the information design that we talked about right at the beginning. I thought some of them were doing more damage than others, but I kind of assumed it was like a bug, or I was just understanding it wrong because there was no feedback of that, unfortunately, to the player. So yeah. So I can understand why they made that change, because they wanted to introduce a bit of variety to some of the enemies and perhaps vary up the gameplay a little bit. But unfortunately, I don't think the way they've made the change has had the impact that they were hoping for. Okay.
So for feedback, then we are.
I think again we're close to absent, because if they didn't attend the lab session to get feedback from the course leaders, then unfortunately playtesting, this is one of the things that playtesting can't solve. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this game, and I think overall it perhaps has some more room for polish, but there is a lot that could be sort of done with this concept, and it could definitely be developed further.
Yes, and
I do think although we've had some criticisms of it, they have at least understood the core dynamic, and with a few bits and changes, this could actually be a really, really good game.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this game and the end of this batch of games as a whole. So we will see you again soon for another video.